Hey guys, welcome back. In this video, we're going to be going over loops. A loop is when you iterate over specific data and you do something with that data. There are two different types of loops. There is for loops and while loops. Right now, I'm just going to talk about for loops. So a for loop's syntax looks like this. For x. Now, when we say for x, right here, x is being created as a new variable. And I'm going to say for x in, and then I'm going to use this function here called range. This is a built-in function. So I'm going to say for x in range, and here we want to pass in, as you can see right here, we want to pass in an integer, and it says stop. So when we pass in here, for example, 10, what this is doing is iterating through the range of 10, which is 0 through 9, and then each time we loop through this, x will be assigned to that number. So if we say here print x, now when we run this, x is going to be first 0, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, as you can see right here. And if it scrolls up, there it goes, 0 through 9. Now I'm going to show you this on a print statement. We can make it so this new line character doesn't get added in every time. And this is so I can just keep it nice and clean on the terminal for you guys to be able to see it. So if we put a comma here and we put a option of end and we set this equal to a space, now when we run this, you see we just get 0 through 9 all on one line separated by a space. Now because we don't have a new line, it's putting my command prompt on the same exact line. So after this, I'm going to put a print with an empty parentheses, and this will ensure that we get a new line character at the end. So now we have printed 0 through 9 on one line, and we have a new line character at the very end here. So again, this range function will go up to the number that we see here. Now we can also make a start and stop with doing a start value, comma, and end value. So this will do the exact same. It'll start at 0 and it'll go up to 10, but not including 10. As you can see, when I reran it, we got 0 through 9. So let's say I wanted to start this at 2, and we wanted to make sure that 10 was included. We would put 2 to 11, and now when we run it, as you can see, we get 2 through 10. Now there's another option you can put in here as well at the end. This is the step. So what this does is it'll start on this value, which is 2, and we're going to print every other x since we're stepping 2. So if I were to put here a 1, we would still get the same result here, 2 through 10. But now, when we change the step to 2, now we're going to be printing every other value, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. And if we do 3, do the same thing, 2, 5, 8. And if the value at the very end is not included with this step, it won't just print the last value. Okay, now that we've seen this, normally we don't use for loops with range. We might iterate over a list in a for loop. So I'm going to come up here, I'm going to set a list. I'm going to say my list is equal to, and we're going to put in here some digits. So we're going to say 5, 3.7, hello, goodbye, and we're going to set a none value as well. So now I'm going to say for x in my list, and now what do you think will happen when we print this? So x is going to be assigned to each item in the list. So first when it prints, it'll print the 5, then 3.7, hello, goodbye, and none. And as you can see right here, we get 5, 3.7, hello, goodbye, and none. And we can also print here the type of each variable. And as you can see, and let me just make this a little bit more better to read. Let's put in a comma as well. And now when we run this, we get 5, and that's an int. 3.7, that's a float. Hello is the string that we add up here. Goodbye is also a string, and none is none type. So most of the time, for loops will be iterating over lists, and most definitely that will be the most basic principle of a for loop. Now the next loop is a while loop. So I'm going to get rid of this, and the syntax for while loop goes as follows. We'll say while, and then we want some condition here. So I'm going to say while n is less than 5. Now, when we declare something like this, n is not automatically transformed into a variable. So we actually have to declare what this n is. So I'm going to say here n equals 0 to begin with. Now, what we want to do here is now we can print what n is, and after each iteration, you know how when we did for loop, it was automatically just getting the very next value in the list? But while loops, they don't just automatically get the next value. So we actually have to increment the list. So here I'm going to say n equals n plus 1. So now when we run this, for each iteration, it's going to print what n is, and it starts off as 0. And then it's going to set n, this variable up here, to itself plus 1. So then when we come up and evaluate this loop again, n will be 1, and it's going to say if n is less than 5, which it would be, and then it'll do the same thing over and over again. And when we run this, we get 1, 0 through 4. And again, I'm going to set the end here equal to a space, so we don't end up going off the screen. And let me print a new line at the end. And there we go, 0 through 4. Okay, now I'm going to show you an endless loop. So, with these statements here, we can put any condition we want. We can even say something like true. So now when we have while true, this will be running forever and ever. So now when we run this, what's going to happen is it's going to say while true, which the condition is true, so it'll come within this block here. Print what our n value is, increment it, and I come back here and it'll say while true again. And it'll keep doing it over and over again. And when I run this, as you can see, my IDE actually crashed. So let me go ahead and reopen it. So that's what happens when you do an endless loop. So to prevent this, what we need is a conditional statement to break out of this loop. And we actually use the break keyword. So this is going to be an endless loop, remember, and we're incrementing n every time. However, I'm going to say if we see that n is equal to the value 10, then I'm going to break. And what this break keyword does is it exits this loop. So now when I run this, we get 0 through 9, because remember, every time we run this loop, n is set to 0 at first, and it increments it by 1. So let's say we get here, we're printing 7, it increments it to 8, and we say while true, and then it checks if 8 is equal to 10, which is not. So now we print 8, increment it to 9, and then we say, is 9 equal to 10? It's not. So we print 9, and now we set n equal to 10, we come in here, and n equals 10, so we break out of it before printing the value of 10. And that's why we see 0 through 9. Now, there's also another easier syntax than doing this n equals to n plus 1 with an easy plus equals, and now when we run this, we get the same value. You can also do any operator on here, you know, like times equals. But of course, when I run this, we're going to be timing 0 by 1 every time, and that's going to be equal to 0. And we're still going to be saying true, and 0 will never be equal to 10, so it's going to be another endless loop. So I'm going to run this and then quickly break out of it. And to break out of something, you just hit Control-C in your terminal, and that'll end your program, but you want to make sure that you click that fast enough. As you can see, we got a whole bunch of zeros here. Oops, and is that clear? Okay. So, now that we've seen both while and true, I'm going to show you one loop that is the exact same thing in both different ways. So, for the first time, we're going to say for x in range, and I'm going to set this equal to 11, because I want to go from 0 to 10, and I'm just going to print x. So, let's make sure that we get the ending right. And let me get a new line. And now we run this, as you can see, we get our 0 through 10. And let me just print before this, and I'm going to say this is the for loop. So that's how we get our for loop there. And I'm actually going to add in a another new line. And now here I'm going to say print, and this is going to be our while loop. So here what we need to do is actually initialize a variable in the beginning. So we need to say n equals 0, because remember this range starts at 0. And I'm going to say while n is less than 11. So now when we run this and we say print n equals a space, and we print our new line. Now I also forgot to increment n here, so we need to say n plus equals 1. And now when we run this, we get the same thing. For loop is 0 through 10, and our while loop is 0 through 10 as well. Now I'm going to show you one extra thing, and this will be in my intermediate Python tutorials. And this is the modulus operator. So here I'm going to say our normal for loop. I'm going to say for x in range 10. And as you know, this goes from 0 to 9. And I'm just going to print x with our ending a space and print a new line. But when we run this, we get our 0 through 9 on the normal. But now what happens if I want to just get the even numbers in this? So 0, 2, 4, 6, 8. Well, we can achieve this using the modulus operator. The modulus operator is the percentage sign. So I'm going to put an if statement here. I'm going to say if, and we say x mod 2. So what this will do is see if our x value has a remainder when we divide it by 2. So for a value to be even, when we divide it by 2, we don't want it to have any remainder. So that'll be equal to 0. And if it is, now we're going to put in this continue statement. What continue does is if this has been confirmed true, then we're going to skip over the rest of the loop. So this is actually going to be the inverse of even numbers. So if I want to actually get the even numbers, I would say if not. So now this is saying if the value is not an even number, then we want to continue, and continue means that we want to skip the rest of that loop and go to the next iteration. So now when we run this, as you can see, we get 0, 2, 4, 6, 8. And again, I'll be having a video later on about the modulus operator and different uses for it. And that's all there really is there for loops. In our next video, we're going to be going over functions.